On this week's episode of The Capitalist Investor, it's for the ladies. And what I mean by that is that women tend to live longer, earn less, save less, and have far more likely to spend their final years managing their finances alone. Today, we're going to talk about retirement planning and how it looks fundamentally different between women and men and what to do about it.
Hey, Tone. What's going on, man? How are you?
What is up, my man? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
All right.
So yeah, got a good, interesting topic this week.
Yeah, I think we are. We're going to talk about women in finance this week. Yeah, I think a lot of we usually use everything as a broad statement. Let's talk about so there's a lot of there's women out there that go at finances alone, and sometimes don't know what to do, who to trust, and that's what we're here to do today.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So let's dive into it here. So, a couple stats up top. Basically, there is a gap between men and women in a lot of these different categories. The first one is the savings gap. So women, on average, save about 39% less compared to men. About 44,000 median retirement savings for women as compared to 91,000 for men.
Yeah, and I find the one stat very eye-opening. So even single men and women, they save a lot less than married couples, right? Having that unit is definitely just more it's more expansive, right? But for women between 55 and 65, it's 88 grand. For men, it's 136,000. But for married couples, like over 400 grand. I mean, it is stifling how the metrics and the difference is. Now, the other part is Social Security, right? And it can become a compounding issue because what happens and it's more statistics, but women tend to earn less than men. So when we start taking a look at Social Security, it's based on it's not gender based, it's based on how much you make. Right. So if you earn less, you're going to receive less. Now this is where we have to now take in the consideration that women live longer.
Right.
And we've come out here on this show and beat the drum like, hey, maybe you should consider taking Social Security as soon as you can.
Right.
Because we don't know what's going to happen next. And for women, maybe we have to be very diligent on this decision, because if you're living longer, it probably makes sense to delay, because every year you delay, it goes up 8% plus the cost of living, and you're going to live longer. So it could be almost worth $90,000 during your lifetime if you delay Social Security, whether it's 8 years or 5 years or 3 years. It could be an exorbitant amount of money. So that's one other thing to talk about. And then there's 4 structural forces driving the gap, all hitting simultaneously. We talked about the wage gap. Then we talk about, when we have aging parents, who's normally taking care of that person? Right. It's mostly not the men, because we just don't have that gene. And it's more like 60% of caregivers are women. And that takes time, energy, and maybe missing work, right? Because you're taking care of an aging population.
For sure. Right?
And then we got the longevity factor. Women are going to live 5 to 10 years longer. I love watching those things on on X, or this is why women live longer. And you got some dude just playing with knives or something weird,
jumping out of a plane.
But just doing some weird stuff, man. So, and then the solo factor, right? Whether you've never been married or you're a widow, right? There is more. It's more likely that you may enter some point on the back end of your retirement and lifespan that you're going to be at this alone. And unfortunately, and this is kind of where my mom has fallen in, is that as you get older, obviously there's condensance issues, right? And sometimes, and I don't want to say it I don't mean this to be derogatory, but sometimes you just get stuck in, I don't want to call it the Stone Age, but when you get a certain age, you don't care about technology, you don't care about
learning new
things, right? And you get stuck 5 years, 10 years, 15 years behind. My mom doesn't I don't think she knows what a smartphone is.
Yeah.
I mean, she kept on asking me, like, for flip phones, right? Like, I had to, you know how hard it was to find a flip phone? It's impossible, man. So there's that, you know, and again, just the data says, you know, like women are more likely to be more stressed out about retirement than men.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you know, and we, this is something we've kind of always talked about, especially when it comes to long-term care, because, something like 7 out of 10 people in a long-term care facility are women, based on those numbers that we just talked about.
Yeah.
So, typically men or women are outliving men, and typically in a relation, I shouldn't say typically, but it seems to be that, the usually men are a little bit older. So there's just a natural gap where essentially the woman is in better health than the man.
Right.
She takes care of the man, and then he passes away, and then she needs some form of care.
Yeah, and that instance right there could deplete retirement assets.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. As somebody, you don't know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Especially if it's a cognitive issue, Alzheimer's, dementia, things like that. Like those are long extended periods of time.
Yeah.
So, so when we get to like Social Security, we touched base on it here in the first segment, but like on this one, it's, what do you do, right? You know, if you just assume nothing's going to change in the future, delaying Social Security, it makes a lot of sense. But the cons behind that is you're depleting your other assets because you don't have that cash flow. Mm-hmm. That can be a concern, should be a concern. And then the uncertainty with Social Security. We beat that drum so many times.
Right.
In 2032, I don't know what's going to happen. The trust fund's going to run out of money. So is everyone getting a pay cut? Or are you going to be taxed different? Are you going to receive it at different times? Mm-hmm. So that's that would be those. That is such a, that's why, I mean, we're going to get to it, but that's why a financial plan is like, can you sustain your lifestyle and your retirement plan if you delay?
Right.
So
for sure. The spousal and survivor benefit is also an important one to know when you're looking at Social Security. So essentially probably the easiest way to look at it is if you're a married couple, one person passes away. Typically, the surviving spouse can take the higher of the two Social Security amounts.
Right.
So, like we said, we'll talk about it in the planning, but that's good to know before you start turning on your benefits, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is if you're lucky enough to have a pension, right? Turning on, their single life or joint life survivor, right? Being, I don't want to say calling it being greedy, but like if you take the single, obviously it's more money.
Right.
Right. But if something happens, there's no parachute.
Yeah.
Right. So being prepared to understand what's going on with those numbers is very important. Right. Yeah. And taking the consideration that to take the survivor spouse is it's a no-brainer, man. Yep. So.
And you already hit on it, man, but it's getting close. When we first got into this business, I think the first number that I taught was Social Security was going to run out in like 2042. I think that was probably the first number. So back in 11, 12 when I was teaching those classes.
I know, right?
So and just in the course of 15 years, that number's all the way down to 2032. And I'm sure it's probably going to run out. Well, I'm not sure, but it's
probably going to click another year or two. So I always say this every time we talk about that. I feel like, that number is getting closer to me, and I'm getting closer to it because I'm aging, right? So
yeah.
All right. So here's the practical playbook for this scenario. What women can do right now is, first and foremost, you can just save more, right? I know it's easy to say. Probably more difficult to do, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. But there are things. So if you're over 50, there's catch-up provisions, right? If you get close to maxing out, IRAs, 401ks, there's extra money that you can save. Modeling. So these are a good one. So like modeling a financial plan for the demise of a spouse, right? If you're a married couple, right? Like that's huge. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of, couples and married couples pick, a financial advisor, because and I'm not going to say who's at fault or not fault, but like there's one spouse that doesn't understand the finances.
Right.
It's just not their forte. And the other spouse is typically like, man, something happened to me. Like, this one over here is not in a good situation, right?
Yep.
I want them to know somebody that I trust and that they like.
Right.
Right. So that's where it's like, hey, I can do this on my own, but if I fall over tomorrow, I've heard this from men and women.
Yep.
Right. Like I need somebody there. So like like balls aren't dropped. Things don't blow up in people's faces. Right.
Yep,
so.
For sure. Yeah, I'd say that's, a conversation I have frequently with my clients. And, a lot of people just fall into kind of that age range we talked about. Man maybe being a year or two older, longevity for men a year or two shorter. So, it's frankly smart planning to make sure you have someone in place if something happens to you first.
Yep. Like looking and exploring guaranteed income sources right now. Obviously we have Social Security. You might have a pension, but what about the self pensions, annuities that have guaranteed lifetime income, right? Do those make sense? Because if we can create a stable floor with guaranteed income, at least we can build around that.
Absolutely.
That was something when my mom became a widow, my stepfather passed away. I'm like, holy cow, right? Like she don't know anything about her investments whatsoever.
Right.
And I'm like, man, I just, for her, and I just knew this right away. I'm like, I have to create as much guaranteed income as possible so she doesn't freak out.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that simple, man?
Yep.
And I don't like to say it this way. I say it more jokingly, but I'm like, man, if something happened with her money, whether she spent it unknowingly or market turns and stuff, she runs out of money. Guess what's happening? She's living in my basement. So I wanted to make sure that there was, I think I set up something where like 70 or 80% of her lifestyle is guaranteed, right?
Yep.
She doesn't live an extravagant life or anything, but that was important to me because I know she's a bigger warrior than I am.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. I mean, know thyself, right? That's very important in financial planning. So, some people just, they're emotionally invested in everything, right? So, right. The more emotion that you can pull out of their investment decisions and the more guaranteed income you can give someone, it might be just perfect for that situation. Other people are, maybe more risk averse. They're willing to take more risks. They're okay with market downturns, but understanding your position and understanding how you're going to react to the market is a big step to being able to plan for the future.
Yep. And with that, let's kind of like, sum this up because, I think all these are great points, right? Because it's have visibility, understand what's going on, work with people you trust in case something happens to the spouse that, works on it, that's been doing this forever. And get a plan and build for the unexpected.
Absolutely.
Right? So as we, wrap this up, again, we have to, you may or may not be in this situation, ladies, but there is a gender gap. And it's not a perception, right? It's a mathematical, reality, and you have to prepare around it, right? So, taking a look at guaranteed income streams, when to turn on Social Security, all that stuff makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And last thing, it's great advice. If you're a woman, whether you're married or single, have a retirement plan that works on its own for you. So understand the issues out there, understand the income flows, and really just the knowledge is power. We always say that we're big on educating our clients. So understanding your retirement plan and the things that it protects is ultimately going to help you sleep well at night.
Yep. So, all right, D, take us home, man.
All right. Well, thanks for listening this week. If you guys have any questions, comments, ideas for the show, hit us up at info@swpconnect.com, and we'll talk to you next week.
The opinions expressed in the podcast are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any investment, legal, financial, or tax strategy. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. Please consult a qualified professional about your individual needs.